Welcome to Windows Explained. In this series, I'll break down various Windows settings and tools. Today's topic, system configuration, also known as MSCONFIG. First, let us know what is MSCONFIG and how to open it. Please note that I am not responsible for any damages that you do if you decide to change the settings. MSCONFIG is a utility designed for troubleshooting Windows startup problems. It allows you to enable or disable software, drivers, and services that launch at startup, and to modify boot settings. To open MSCONFIG, you have two options. Press Windows key plus R, type MSCONFIG, and press Enter. Or search for MSCONFIG in the Windows search bar. Now let us look into the interface and what is included in each tab. When you first boot to system configuration, you will be automatically placed in General. In General, from what you can see, it includes the startup selection. When you boot your PC, it contains three startup options: Normal, Diagnostic, and Selective Startup. Normal Startup, meaning that all devices and services that Windows and you have installed or enabled on startup will run as usual. This is what your PC should be running, and it is set at default. Diagnostic Startup, this will only run the devices and services that's needed for Windows to operate. In simpler meaning, only essential Windows devices and services are loaded. Selective Startup, as the name suggests, you can set what services or startup items that will load once your PC boot up. There is also an option where you can just opt to use the original Windows boot configuration. Boot tab. This tab displays your installed operating systems. Set as default button sets which highlighted operating system will be booted on startup, or basically the primary operating system. Delete will delete the highlighted operating system. Clicking Advanced Options will show a pop-up for Boot Advanced Options tab. Number of processors allocates the number of processors for boot debugging and troubleshooting. Same as with maximum memory, it allocates the amount of memory used for boot debugging and troubleshooting. Both should be left unchecked. You may have seen videos telling you to change it and set it so your PC can use all the processors and memory. However, that is wrong. There is a common misconception that setting it to the highest value for your PC will improve the speed and performance of your PC, but it is actually the opposite and will not change anything and might cause a decrease in performance. Here is some evidence from Imribiy, who is the creator of XOS, which is a tweaked Windows operating system or custom OS that is focused on performance. As you can see, it has lower performance compared to leaving it unchecked. So why does everyone set it or max it out? You see, the number of processors is set to 1. People assume that Windows is only using one core processor, so they want to max it out the same as with memory. At default it is set to 0, so they do the same and max it out as well. To check if all your cores or processors are enabled, just open Task Manager, go to Performance, then CPU, and right-click, hover Change Graph to then click Logical Processors, so you should see each of your cores have its own graph. You can also do benchmarks like Cinebench to see if all your processors are being utilized. If it's not being utilized under load, then it could mean that it has an unparked core or processor. A separate video will be made about that and how to enable it. It will be linked in the description or in the comments once it's uploaded. To check if all your memory is working, just go to Memory. Now back to the main discussion. Under those is PC iLock. It prevents Windows from reallocating or changing I/O and IRQ resources on the PCI bus. Below that is the Global Debug Settings area. This is used for debugger connection settings. Debug port specifies the communication channel used for debugging, often a serial port like COM1. Baud rate. If a serial port is selected, this sets the data transmission speed. Back to the Boot tab and Boot Options area, we have Safe Boot options. What is Safe Boot, you may ask? Safe Boot, or more known as Safe Mode, starts Windows in a basic state, using a limited set of files and drivers. Here you can choose if you want Safe Boot on with options: Minimal, Alternate Shell, Active Directory Repair, and Network. Minimal is basically standard safe mode and loads essential drivers and services. Alternate Shell opens the command prompt instead of the Windows Explorer interface. Active Directory Repair is for restoring active directories. Network is safe mode with network support, which allows internet access. No GUI boot disables the Windows loading screen startup. Boot log creates a log file recording what is happening during boot, useful for troubleshooting. Base video starts the PC with standard Vega graphics driver, useful if you have display driver issues. OS boot information displays information during startup. Timeout specifies the amount of time the boot menu is displayed before the system starts. Basically, if you have multiple operating systems, there will be a pop-up menu on startup that lets you choose what operating system you want to use, kinda like this image shown, and timeout specifies how long that should be displayed. Make all boot settings permanent makes the selected boot options and changes permanent. Services tab. This tab lists all installed Windows services. You can enable or disable them as needed for troubleshooting or diagnostic. Startup tab. This tab manages applications that launch at startup. You can add or remove programs from the startup list. Clicking the Open Task Manager hyperlink will lead you to the Startup tab in Task Manager. Lastly, Tools tab. This is basically a list of tools found in Windows that can be helpful in debugging and troubleshooting. That covers the basics of MSCONFIG. Remember, be cautious when modifying these settings, and I am not responsible for any damages that you do, so do it at your own risk. If I have missed something that should be included, or if there is something wrong or inaccurate about the information, please put them in the comments. If you have questions or feedback, leave a comment below. If you found this helpful, a like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated.